Good evening, members and officers. Welcome to the Scrutiny Committee for Leader Finance Performance, which is going out via a remote video link on Wednesday, the 10th of November, 2021 at 6 p.m. Item 1 is the roll call and virtual meetings explanation. I'd like to welcome the members of Democratic Services, Legal Service and the management team. First thing I'm going to do is conduct a roll call. Councillor Alison Bennett.
Present.
Councillor Heidi Brunson. Councillor Philip Coote. I've seen you, I know you're there.
Present.
Councillor Rachel Cromie.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Anne Eves.
Present.
Councillor Gibson.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Janice Henwood.
Present.
Councillor Hicks.
Present.
Councillor Jackson.
Present.
Councillor Knight, I'm here. Councillor Lee.
Good evening, present.
Thank you. Councillor Paulford, my vice chairman, is going to be a few minutes late caught in traffic. Councillor.
I'm present, Mr. Chairman.
Oh, thank you very much. Thank you. Councillor Lynn Stockwell.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Colin Trumbull.
Present.
And Councillor Whittaker.
Present.
Thank you very much. I'm sure you're all aware how the meeting is conducted by Zoom, but our legal officer will give a brief explanation. Tom, please.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. We're holding this meeting virtually. As members will know, last week we had the unfortunate situation where we were probably the highest COVID rate in England. It's now coming down, but we are not a decision-making meeting, and therefore we can hold it virtually, which seems sensible at this time.
Thank you very much, Tom. Item 2, to note any substitutes in accordance with Council Procedure Rule 4, I have none. To receive apologies for absence, I have none. Item 4, to receive declarations of interest from members in respect of any matter on the agenda. Please raise your hand if you have got any declarations of interest. I see none. Item 5, to confirm the minutes held on the 15th of September 2021. If you would use the voting buttons under reactions, do you agree with them or not? Thank you. That's everybody in favour. Thank you very much. Item 6, consider any items the chairman agrees to take as urgent business. I have none. Moving to item 7, performance monitoring for the second quarter of 2021. This will be introduced by Neil Barton. Neil, please.
Thank you, Chairman. This is the second quarter performance report, which covers the period from the 1st of July to the end of September. Performance has been generally good, with 76% of our indicators showing at green, meaning they're on or above target. So the report is in the usual format with an appendix which sets out the Scrutiny Committee's performance indicators with the traffic light system and also some commentary against relevant indicators and some contextual information on workloads. So as we say in the covering report, COVID still has implications for the delivery of council services, even though most of the restrictions were lifted on the 19th of July. There's still plenty of our services that are affected by COVID and additional responsibilities. We set these out in the report and include environmental health in their public health role and also in advising business on COVID security. The housing services team, who are dealing with more people in temporary accommodation, and also revenues and benefits in paying out business grants. And also they've got an increased workload in terms of council tax support adjustments that they need to do. There's a couple of other services that have also had an increase in workload. One is affected by the property market, which is land charges, which continue to have an increase in the number of searches they have to process. And also we've had an increase in the number of planning applications that we deal with. So hopefully in the report, where we've not hit the target, we've set out the reasons for this, but I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Neil. What I'll do with members, I'm going to take it section by section and give you an opportunity to ask any questions. So we'll start with the first section Building control. Tom Clark will answer any questions on this if you have any. See any hands. Community services policy and performance. Councillor Whitaker, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, it's really just a compliment, really. I was very pleased on the wellbeing, the number of health and wellbeing interventions, particularly pleased with Moatfield surgery in East Grinstead, which I know is a very proactive surgery amongst lots of others, I think, in our district, that they've appointed a wellbeing health coach, and clearly there are more referrals. So I think that's a really strong link that should be encouraged. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Trumbull.
Thank you, Chairman. Carrying on from that point raised by Councillor Whitaker, where was it? Yes, I've lost it. The coach being employed by Moatfield Surgery is being funded by them, which is good. I just wanted to know what the relationship is, how they interact with our wellbeing team. I guess it's some sort of referral basis, but could somebody just confirm that? Thank you.
Emma, are you on the? Is Emma there, Judy? Or?
I think I can answer that question.
Okay, Neil, thank you.
Oh, yeah. The person employed at the Moatfield Surgery is actually a member of the wellbeing team. So we have a lot of referrals that go to the wellbeing team from other doctors' surgeries, but the Moatfield Surgery is the first one where we've got a dedicated member of the wellbeing team who actually works at the Moatfield Surgery, and we have had interest from other GP surgeries in getting a similar arrangement in place. So, as I say, that member of staff is actually a member of the council's wellbeing team.
Thank you.
May I come back then, Chairman?
You may.
So he's one of our team. He's a mid-Sussex person, but is being paid for by the surgery. Is that right, Neil?
Correct, yeah.
So all of his terms and conditions, his pay, his pension and so on, those are the same as for other MSDC people? And are the surgery also funding on costs? Thank you.
As I understand it, the terms and conditions are the same as for the rest of the staff employed in that section. And I understand that they would be paying the on-cost as well.
Thank you. Judy, do you want to comment? I see Judy Holmes. No, I've got your hand raised. It's okay. No problem. Okay, moving along. Environmental health. I see no questions. Land charges. I see no questions. Legal and member services. Customer services and communications. Councillor Lynn Stockwell.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, looking at the waiting times and all that type of stuff, where with the new telephone system still under development, we're not getting any data on that whatsoever. And my concern is that in the other parts of the report we're going to be looking at today about the what's it called? Hang on a minute. The capital program monitoring. I noticed that the telephone thing seems to have been is delayed. So we're how long are we going to have to wait until we get some data here? And the other question I have is in terms of the number of complaints that we get through and the compliments, how are we picking those up if we're not doing the telephone inquiries and getting the customer service questionnaires out? Because at the moment, what we're seeing here really isn't telling us very much at all. So perhaps you could explain that to me, please.
Thank you. Neil, would you like to comment?
I think that might be Simon Hughes is the
Thank you.
head of service on that.
Simon, are you there? Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. In answer to Councillor Stockwell's questions, the reason that we're unable to currently get customer wait times is because the system's been changed considerably. So what used to happen is customers would dial in and then be transferred to another number. Now what happens is customers dial in and the system automatically transfers them to an available customer services person. So we're not getting wait times in the same way that we used to. They would be significantly reduced times, partly because calls can transfer quickly, and if no customer services person is available, it transfers to the relevant department. We're looking to have those new measures ready in the new year, but they won't reflect wait times in the same sense. It will be the ability for the system to move a call quickly to who needs to answer it. So that's why the system has changed. The reason for that is that the old system we had was nearly 20 years old. That was the only measure available. The new system has much more sophisticated data, so it's arriving at those that are most applicable to understanding how our service is performing for our residents. On the number of complaints and the satisfaction questionnaire, that was simply a pause over COVID, and we're revising the customer service questionnaire so that we can have effectively far more detailed information about what people are satisfied about and learn from that. And we're looking to combine that with the information from complaints, which is a separate customer services measure, so that we can build on complaints, compliments, and the feedback we get through customer surveys. So effectively, that's 3 measures of how well we're performing with our local residents.
Thank you. Can I just follow that up, please, Chairman?
Please do.
Yeah, thank you, Simon. When will we see the effects of this within the reports that we're looking at?
We're looking to produce the data early in the new year. We're currently awaiting some software addition from Microsoft, because our system is Teams. It's the same same system we often use for meetings. And so we're just waiting for the next upgrade of that small part. So it'll come shortly after that.
So we will then have some meaningful data coming through to us.
Yes, what I would say is we already have meaningful management information, but that's not the same as the PIs that you're presented with here. So we're able to monitor things like the number of calls that are transferred, who calls go to, what the calls cover, and so on, far more detail than we give to you in these performance indicators. That currently is going on, and we do manage that, but that's not the same as this performance indicator here.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Simon, for your comprehensive answer. Councillor Hicks.
Yes, thank you. Firstly, a compliment in terms of the e-forms, and I was pleased to get a proper automatic response with the full details of the query when I last raised a litter bin issue. But just to go in terms of a question, looking at the number of phone calls coming in, we're suggesting what looks like a 22% drop compared with the Q2 this year compared with the previous year. And looking across all forms of incoming communication, whether in person or phone calls or e-forms, we're looking at a 28% drop since 2019. And I just wondered, in terms of any reasons for that, particularly around the phone system, and thinking also that there's a gap around social media or website stats, which may explain some of the reduction. And it would be perhaps interesting to see some stats on that area. Thank you.
Simon, do you have a view on that, please?
Yes, certainly. We are seeing a trend over the last 3 to 4 years where people are increasingly either transacting on a website rather than ring us up for queries. So this is the difference. What people tend to do by ringing is they're looking to receive a service and inquire about a service. And as we've revised our website and more services have come online, people simply go online and receive that service. So that's more proactive than reactive. Calls tend to be reactive. So that's where the trend is shifting, and also digital literacy is improving or increasing, I should say, and also software is becoming simpler to use. You might not feel that personally, but it is. And that's showing the shift to a different channel. We do already record the number of, we record things like dwell times, followers, people that have seen posts on all different social media channels. So social media, but also any other things like Instagram, those sorts of things that we post on. And we generally review that in our media analysis. But we do have all that information. So what we'll often do is look at any post that we have and the reach it gives. So how many people has it reached? What's their dwell time? But that's management information and less performance information. So we do have that.
Thank you. Councillor Trumbull, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Carrying on this area of customer services, personal callers, telephone calls, and so on. Just a comment, if I may. I think it's right and proper that we continue to ask critical questions on this area and look at it in that way. However, my memory goes back some considerable time to the period when we used to have, and I've forgotten the name of it, we used to have a joint council set up for managing customer services and incoming telephone calls. And frequently on this committee, we were tearing our hair out with the appalling statistics that were coming out. This is significantly better. And I think compared to that, we are giving top-rate customer service here. So I'd just like to compliment the team in what have been very difficult times. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Trumbull. Councillor Whitaker.
Thanks, Chairman. So, on similar vein, number of compliments is always good to see. Good to see it's increased as well. We've even got 2 for parking, which I think is incredible. So long may that continue and increase for that. Thank you.
Again, Councillor Whitaker, thanks for your feedback. I see no other questions on that category. So human resources on page 14. Anybody have any questions? Councillor Jackson, we have a few here. Councillor Jackson first, please.
On the staff turnover, are there any significant gaps in our staffing, and has that any significant effect on the services we provide?
Simon, are you able to take that?
Yes, I am. Thanks. We're not necessarily seeing gaps. In some areas, we're seeing the recruitment time being extended, so it takes longer to get suitable candidates. I would anticipate as we move more into post-COVID and markets recover, we might start to see some gaps, but that's not the position now. The ways that we manage that particular risk, we look at succession planning, training, apprenticeships, and so on. So at the moment, that's not a significant pressure for us, but that's not to say we aren't planning to mitigate the risks should they arise.
Thank you.
Councillor Janice Henwood, please.
On a similar topic, in which departments have the staff left as 23? Which departments are suffering most in this loss of staff? Thank you.
Thank you. No specific departments. Those are across the council in different departments. As you would expect, were we to see reductions in staff or staff leaving in any particular area, we would look at what is the cause of that. And the causes could be multiple. They could be that people are offered posts elsewhere with, bluntly, more pay, better conditions, those sorts of things. So always when we look at staffing, staff rewards, we're looking at what is the current market, showing people what are the opportunities elsewhere, what opportunities do we provide. But on this particular case, there's no particular area that is losing staff. Most of those are, or not most of them, but a number are actually due to people retiring. So probably a bigger risk for us is the age of staff.
Councillor Rachel Cromie.
Hi, still on the same subject of staff turnover. In the notes, it says that there is a a more active labour market post-COVID affected greater availability of home working. I just wanted to know what the situation is around home working with the staff. Does it vary from department to department? And how flexible are we on working patterns?
Thank you, Chairman. We have a home working policy, so home working is available across the council. That is obviously linked to the person's role. For some roles aren't suitable for home working. However, over the COVID period, as you'd expect, we've really looked at how we can resource and support staff to homework where appropriate. So things like mobile devices, laptops, the security that's available on devices, but also the pastoral care that's supplied, how managers can have team meetings virtually, those sorts of things have been not just planned and trained in, but delivered. And what we're seeing is an increase in home working, but still staff are some staff are coming in, when it's required. I think it's fair to say that employers across both public and private sector are looking at the impact of COVID and what that's meant for people's preferences around home working and what that means for retention. And as I said earlier about the terms and conditions that people would expect to see that effectively have become normalised post-COVID. But we constantly do that. We're part of a joint forum of other councils. So we look at what's happening elsewhere, not just in Sussex, but also in the country, in order to be abreast of changes and effectively ahead of them. But as it refers to your particular question about our staff, many of them, homework, and that hasn't. Well, actually, what we're seeing is that's helped in terms of productivity and also their own personal preferences in terms of what suits them.
Thank you,
Simon. Very helpful.
Very comprehensive answer. Thank you. Moving along to ICT and Digital. I'm still on page 14. Councillor Whittaker.
Sorry, Chairman, I just wanted to follow up that staffing issue. I can give a very good example. I attended quite a complicated pre-app meeting with the planning department on a site in East Grinstead, and I think there were 5 or 6 of the planning team there. It was really impressive, including the drainage officer, obviously the urban designer, number of staff. That they all linked absolutely professionally and superbly, actually, and it came across really, really well, and I thought an excellent reflection on this council. Thank you.
Your comments are noted, Councillor Whittaker. Thank you very much. Any questions on ICT and Digital? I see none. Revenues and benefits on page 15. Okay, moving along to finance on page 17. No, I see no questions. Property and asset maintenance. 18, we're moving along to economic development. Councillor Janice Henwood.
Oh, thank you, Chairman. Just for my own clarity and understanding, when we talk about footfall in the Orchards Shopping Centre, is this value plus 2.4, is that an increase in footfall in Q2 over Q1? Is that what that reads?
Judy Holmes, I think you're going to take this, please.
Thank you. I'm assuming, Councillor Henwood, that it is over Q1, but I can get that clarified and let you know that that's certainly what it looks like to me.
Thank you.
Councillor Whittaker, please.
Yes, on similar vein, the figures on Orchards look very good, and I'm very mindful after last week's council meeting comments about between Burgess Hill and the Orchards, but 80,000 people per week for a 3-month period as an average sounds pretty good, and I'm assuming that those figures hopefully will be increasing obviously throughout this Q3 and the autumn period.
Thank you, Councillor Whittaker. Councillor Trumbull.
Thank you, Chairman. Again, on footfall, what is normal for this time of year? Be interesting to compare that to where we normally are. And also, are there any comparators with other similar shopping centres and how we are faring? Thank you.
Judy, yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Shall I answer that, Chairman?
Please, yes.
Yeah. Okay. So footfall for Q2 21-22. Sorry, that should say 20. That's a typo, I think. Actually, that should say 2021 was 1.99 million. So there's a comparator there. In terms of comparisons with other shopping centres, I'm not aware that we're actually going into that level of detail, but that is certainly some information that we could look at and come back to you with, perhaps at the next report.
Okay, thank you. That's very good. Thank you. Oh, evening, Councillor Hardy-Brunson. Have you? Are you just saying you're here, or you?
No, I wanted to comment on that and just say that measuring customer footfall. I mean, I'd be interested to know what the lowest performing hours are of the orchard, and how that links in with any. I know that's a difficult thing to quantify, but the effect on sales volumes. I mean, it really comes down to how effective orchard is. I mean, everyone can walk through orchard. It's just whether, in fact, the longer term, it's actually a place where people want to go and purchase items. So I think I'd like to understand whether we can get any data about underperforming stores or marketing effectiveness of the orchard as a whole. You know, and maybe some real-time footfall traffic might be useful for us just to understand the true metrics of it. That's it.
I think it'd be interesting to know how we record the footfall. Have you got?
Yeah.
Please, Judy, have you able to
Yes.
put light on that?
Okay, so it uses mobile data from your phone, but the request I think that Councillor Brunston has just made, and perhaps some of the other members are actually moving towards, is far more detailed report on actually the performance of the orchards rather than a performance indicator report. Remember, performance indicators are there to give you a health check. It's a pulse. It won't ever provide you with the granularity of detail that I think members of the committee might be seeking. Now, of course, that is something that we can provide, but it would require a separate work stream because we wouldn't have that level of detail without working very closely with the individual retailers in the shopping centre.
Thank you. Deputy Leader, Councillor Judy Llewellyn, you want to come in?
Yes, please. I know it's perhaps I shouldn't comment, but I feel I should. Having talked about the orchards at the council meeting, I don't think that Councillor Brunston was there, so she may not be aware that most of the units are fully let. I think we've got one more that we're negotiating to let. So that reflects the desire of retailers, both independent and chains, to want to go to the orchards, and reflects the success of it. So if it wasn't a desirable place and a successful place for retailers to be, they wouldn't want to be there. And there's some comfort to be had in that. That's all I wanted to say. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Councillor Hicks.
Yes, Chairman, I just highlight that we are just talking about the orchards. We're not talking about Burgess Hill or East Grinstead or even the villages. And it does seem, given that's unlikely to change in the future, given the data requirements in terms of how we collect it, I just wondered if we'd looked at alternative performance measures, and really, particularly as this is an economic development performance measure, it the current stats may indicate the health of our property portfolio, but they don't really give a flavour for economic development in the district as a whole. So I think that perhaps that's an area that we need to look at. Thank you.
Judy Holmes, did you want to comment, please?
I actually agree. I think that's right. And that's something that the team have been looking to do, particularly using the Welcome Back funding and Reopening High Streets funding with the government. And we're looking at how we can actually improve the suite of indicators that we bring to this committee in the future to provide you with a better range of data around the health of our town centres.
Thank you. Okay, no more questions on that subject. Parking services, still on page 18. Questioners. Moving on to 19, landscapes. Nope. Leisure operations. Councillor Alison Bennett, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I think we're all pretty familiar with the trouble that the leisure centres have gone through as a result of the pandemic, and we all very much want to see footfall to the leisure centres return to pre-pandemic levels. So looking at the Q2 21-22 value of 270,000, and comparing that to the pre-pandemic performance in Q2 of 19-20 of 444,000, that says to me that footfall or visits to the leisure centres are at 60% of what they were before the pandemic. And clearly that's sort of, I would imagine, a substantial concern to the council. That's obviously aggregated over a quarter. I was wondering whether, in each of those 3 months in Q2 this year, whether you've seen an increase as more things have opened up, whether that information's, that information or it's available. But more sort of fundamentally, underneath what that trend is, what's the thinking amongst officers or cabinet member about the plan for the leisure centres to make sure that those visits come back to pre-pandemic levels, and if they don't, then what's the plan B? Thank you.
Thank you. Judy Holmes, would you like to comment on that, please?
Yes, if only we had a crystal ball, and if only we knew when the issues around the pandemic have gone. And we heard what Tom Clark said at the beginning of this meeting about the rates in this district. And I think that we can't predict customer behaviour. But what we can do is try to encourage customer confidence. And that's a careful balance. So working with Places Leisure, the contractor, we are seeking to constantly reassure, improve, and encourage customers back into the centres by making sure that they feel comfortable and confident and COVID safe when they're using our centres. At the same time, obviously, we're seeking to focus on things that maximise our income, because we do need to improve the income, because obviously for every person that visits, there's a cost associated with that. And for every person that doesn't visit, there's a lost income opportunity. So we have been monitoring on a monthly basis the income levels at the centres, and we use an independent consultant to reconcile those figures every month. And we are trying to forecast as best we can, based on previous trends, what we anticipate the situation will be, particularly going into the next financial year. So all I can do at this moment is reassure you that we work very closely with Places Leisure on trying to maximise income opportunities and encourage people back into the centres. We're confident there's a steady increase. We're seeing a steady increase. We're hoping that the financial support we've had to give to the centres in this financial year is far less than that we had to give in the previous financial year. And then going forward into next financial year, it will be less again. But we are managing that as carefully as we can.
Thank you. Did you want to come back, Councillor Bennett?
If I could, please, Chairman. Thank you.
Please.
Thank you, Judy, for your comprehensive answer. It's good to know that you're looking at changes in customer behaviour. I suppose the sort of other side of the coin on that question is, what's the plan for the council's finances, given the likely ongoing loss of revenue because of the management fee we have with Places Leisure? So I don't know if that's a question for Mr. Stewart or not, but how are we going to sort of balance that if it's not going to come back in line?
If I start, and then I think probably Peter Stewart will want to come in. As you know, we're in a contractual situation. The pandemic, triggered the force majeure, which meant that we were in exceptional circumstances and were required to support the contract, legally required. We've been doing that, and the big question for us is, when can we anticipate going back to normal contractual circumstances? And all the while the situation is as it is, we're advised that we can't do that. So we have to continue to support that contract. Obviously, there'll come a point at which we'll need to review that alongside lots of other councils across the country who are also in the same situation. And we continue to monitor that really carefully. At the moment, we're not saying that is the case, and we remain confident that we can come back to some sort of normality in the coming financial year. But of course, all of that is caveated with what happens regarding the pandemic. I don't know if you wanted to add anything to that, Peter, if that's okay, Chairman.
Well, thank you, Chairman. Not to forestall the debate about what the plan B, of course, later in the agenda, you do have a report that sets out your ability to scrutinise the budget, which starts, of course, before Christmas with a draft budget, and then shows then you have a debate at your meeting, I think it's the 12th of January, I think. So probably the time to debate what happens in plan B is there, but in short, if the income does not materialise, we will be using reserves to balance the budget for the next year. But that is certainly a subject upon which members will wish to opine at the scrutiny meeting in January, I'm sure.
Thank you, Peter. Next up is Councillor Gibson, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I was covering pretty much the same down that Councillor Bennett's already covered, but I would like to thank the officers for putting the extra information in about what was happening pre-pandemic. Can we hang on to the 60% figure, and so that we know whether that goes up or down when we next look at these figures, just so we know what the trend is? And if we could look at it on a monthly basis, that would be absolutely excellent, just to see if that 60% was across the period, or whether it was something like 40, 60, 80, which would make me feel much more confident about what the Assistant Chief Executive is saying. Thank you.
Personally, I think a quarterly report, it would enough to show you the trend there, Councillor Gibson, but if anybody else would like to see that on a monthly basis.
The devil's in the detail, Chairman.
Often. Councillor Cromie, please.
Yeah, somebody who has just renewed my membership at the Leisure Centre after a considerable couple of years. I just wanted to commend the staff at all three of the leisure centres. They are doing their utmost to create a really safe atmosphere. Everything is working really smoothly. And I must say the app that they've created, which allows you to pre-book, is incredibly simple. And if I'd known it was that simple, I may have gone a little bit earlier. But I just wanted to say huge thank you to the staff for doing a really great job in trying times.
Thank you. Councillor Holly Brunston.
Hi, yeah, it's only a really simple question. Do we have the data that captures the various sectors within our leisure. So, for example, how many people are swimming every day, what time they're swimming, you know, what that modal shift has been, how that differs pre-pandemic. Are we seeing anybody come back? I say this because increasingly the private sector is picking up and being a lot more flexible because it can afford to be. And I just wonder whether we're being priced out of the market in some regards to some of the services that we want to offer at these centres.
I think that's a good question. Julie Holmes, are you able to answer? Are we able to break that down by what services people are using at the leisure centres, please?
Yes, obviously the council, even before the pandemic, had a role in monitoring the contract and holding Places Leisure to account. So, of course, that information is available. It's clearly management information. It's the kind of detail that officers would be getting involved in, and indeed our advisors. The sports consultancy, who were appointed by Sport England to support us during the pandemic. So yes, we have that very, very fine grain level of detail at our fingertips, and it's constantly monitored and adjusted, and adjustments are made when we think that there are opportunities for improvements, which is why the Places Leisure have introduced recently some booking systems that were adopted during COVID and actually have proven to be very successful in ensuring throughput. I think, you know, Councillor Crumb has already indicated that as a user of the service.
That's good. Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Lee, please.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. So to build on a comment made earlier about when is normal going to return, it does seem to me that actually the old normal is never going to return. It's going to be a new normal. And building what was said earlier, the old formulas may not work anymore. So it could well be, I think, we're going to wind up with needing more tickets, more flexible tickets to be more desirable and efficient, not just from the point of view of gaining revenue, but also from the point of view of serving our residents. I realise that repeats quite a lot of what was said, but I think to look for the old revenue to come back, the old world to come back is possibly going to be disappointed. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Jackson, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Swimming is very important, especially for young children. They can learn to swim. Also, swimming pools are quite expensive to run and to maintain. Is the revenue we're receiving from the swimming pools adequate to keep them running, so to speak?
So I didn't quite grasp that yet. What was the question, Councillor Jackson? Sorry.
Are the revenues from the swimming pools sufficient to cover the sort of costs of running them and maintaining them?
Julie Holmes, would you like to comment on that?
I think that if I could just put that in a slightly different way, the council's interest in the contract is its management fee, and it was securing a management fee of 1.4 million. At the moment, the leisure centres aren't generating sufficient income in order for Places Leisure to pay the management fee to the council, but also to run the leisure centres without some form of subsidy from the council. In truth, actually, to answer the specific point, swimming is a good income generator. Classes are a good income generator. So actually, most of the income that we are getting or are seeing through the centres is coming from swimming and classes.
Thank you. Councillor Trumbull.
Thank you, Chairman. I guess this might be a final point on this. I just think we need to keep this all in perspective. We as members are not here to manage the leisure centres. That's somebody else's job, thankfully, because we don't have the expertise. We are here to see that we are getting a sound financial return from the management contract. So we want to see that's being done in the right way. We are also here to see that the leisure centres provide the kind of service that our residents want from them. And I think Councillor Lee makes a very interesting point, actually, that what was ain't necessarily going to be what is in the future. People are on Peloton bikes and heaven knows what other forms of torture now following the pandemic. So perhaps the nature of the offer that we have to give is changing, but we're not the ones to come up with that. That's going to be Places Leisure and our officers that do that. But yes, we need to be aware of it. So I just think we need to keep into perspective. It's the management fee we're concerned about, and it's the nature and quality of the offering to our residents. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Trumbull. Okay, moving along to sustainability. Do I have any questions on that? Councillor Annies, please.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, asking about the charging points again. Thank you to Councillor Gibson for getting us some more information. I'm just wondering whether there's any plan to repair the ones that are broken, because the one at Cyprus Road has been broken for a long time now. Thank you.
Judy Holmes.
You'll be aware that the council, alongside many other councils in West Sussex and West Sussex County Council, have just entered into a procurement agreement with Connected Curb. 26 of which of chargers will be heading towards Mid Sussex, 9 of which will be to replace the EV charging points that are outmoded and are not effective. And the intention is that they will be in place by the end of this financial year.
Thank you. Councillor Whitaker.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, in similar vein, obviously the figures are quite radically different on the electric charging. So I've got 2 questions really. One is, why is Cyprus Road so low? And I think Councillor Eaves might have touched on that, but I just wanted to confirm if in fact it's been out of action for the last quarter, hence why it's so low. And who pays for this power? Is it the customer that pays for the power, or is it subsidised, or I don't know. Sorry, I wonder if somebody can answer that.
Neil, you've been some correspondence back to Councillor Gibson. I think you answered some of these questions. Do you want to take that?
I don't actually know the situation with the whether people are charged for using the charging points, and obviously we confirm that the Cyprus Road bird still figure is so low because I haven't been working over the last quarter. Could you repeat what the second question was there, please?
Councillor Whitaker. Okay.
Yeah, it's what's the charging tariff or schedule generally? What's the arrangement, commercial arrangement?
So I'm not aware of what the situation is with how people are charged for the using the charging points in our car parks. I don't know if any other officers can help on that one.
Sorry, do you want me to answer?
I can. Oh.
Yeah, the customer pays.
Thank you. Councillor Gibson.
Similar to last time, thank you very much to officers for the extra information, which proves, of course, there's fascinating stuff in the detail, and I can only hope for some more. I made myself unpopular at county when I made the point that the provision of electric vehicle charging points is not a statutory duty for councils. And I do rather worry in the context like leisure centre just how much effort we're putting into things which by law we're not legally required to do. In the case of these electric vehicle charging points, one of the points that I feel about this is that there is no condition for market failure in the position of in these points. Connected Curb is a commercial company which is going to make a profit out of charging for the electricity that its charging points will provide. So I'd like to advance the radical idea that the council should be charging rental for the space that these take up in its car parks in order to get a share of the return that the provider will actually be getting. Just recognising, if you like, the financial position that the council's in at the moment. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gibson. Councillor Anne Eves.
Sorry to come back, Chair. So I understand from Judy Holmes that 9 will replace the broken ones. So no plan to repair the ones that are broken. So of the 26 new ones, 9 will come to Mid Sussex. So actually there'll only be 3 new ones. Is that correct? Thank you.
Is that correct?
No, it's not. There'll be 26 in total coming into Mid Sussex, 9 of which will be directed initially at those ones that are not working or are not effective. And they'll be in place by the end of the financial year.
Thank you. Moving along to page 20, waste and outdoor services. Councillor Janice Henwood, please.
Oh, thank you, Chairman. I'm confused. Amount of waste for going into landfill. I don't quite understand. The target for Q1, the target was 425 kilos. Okay, and then for Q2, the target was 106 kilos. I don't understand this. So we've decreased from Q1 when it was 425, and now we've gone down, which is good news, less in landfill. So we just don't want landfill. So I want to know, as the councils, are there any plans that we can actually get this down further and further? Any educational ways to approach the public for this landfill? Perhaps more visits to the sites where they dump the landfill, which is pretty alarming, and that might encourage people to dump less. Thank you very much. That's my question. Any plans?
Judy Holmes, would you like to comment on that, please?
Yeah, this council, along with all the other districts and boroughs, are part of the West Sussex Waste Partnership, and that partnership allocates funding to support educational activities and to obviously encourage recycling, etc. And I know that they're always working on trying to improve people's understanding of landfill and bringing in campaigns and initiatives. So it's a constant battle, and we will constantly be working towards obviously reducing the amount, that is the target, as you said, to reduce the amount that goes to landfill.
Thank you. I see no more questions on there. Moving on to page 21, development management on a housing and planning portfolio. Do I have any questions, please? Comments? Councillor Trumbull.
Thank you, Chairman. Looking at planning appeals allowed, that's 23%. And you could look at that 2 ways, really. One, you could say, yes, that's relatively low. So we should be fairly pleased about it. And that's backed up by costs awarded against council, which at the moment are 0 on appeal. However, you can look at it another way and say, well, hang on a minute, that's 1 in 4 appeals which are allowed. I think we need to be vigilant and continue to be vigilant and make jolly sure that our planning committees are making decisions that are based on objective planning reasons. Because we mustn't lose that position. Otherwise, that will, in time, impact that costs factor. So I don't need to know what plans are in place now, unless other members of the committee want to, but I would urge the council to take steps to ensure that we continue to and improve the way that we make planning decisions. Thank you, Chairman.
Your comments are noted, Councillor Trumbull. Thank you. And the last item in this section, housing. Councillor Lynn Stockwell, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, it would appear at the bottom here that 2 out of the 6 106 signs agreements have provided affordable housing. And as I read that, it's saying that we've lost 66 affordable houses on the grounds of viability. I just find that staggering. 66 affordable houses we've lost because the developers have cried, they've got their crocodile tears out and chucked the toys out of the pram. What are we doing to really, really pin these people down to what they've agreed, what was agreed when their planning applications were approved, and making sure that they stick to it? Because to me, that's 4 of them not doing it. That's appalling. So I'd like to know what's happening there, please.
Judy, would you like to comment, Judy Holmes?
Yes, I mean, believe it or not, we did some comparisons actually with other councils, and we do remarkably well in comparison to many, many other councils actually. Thank goodness we do. But of course, every social housing, affordable housing unit we lose, it's somebody's home. So it's hard fought. I would direct you to the recent SBD that we recently adopted about 2 years ago now, where we actually improved our chances by strengthening our ability to hold developers to account on viability. And you'll be aware that we have an independent assessment, and we also introduce a review clause. So just because it's not viable now doesn't mean that when they come to build it out, if there's a delay, that we will revisit the viability to see if it remains unviable. But we do work very hard, but at the end of the day, of course, it is down to an independent assessment of viability.
Can I just ask one more question on that, please, Chairman?
Yes, briefly, please. Yeah.
Yeah, very briefly. So when you say an independent assessment of that viability, who does that assessment?
There are a whole range of companies that will do that, including the district valuer. Okay. So usually it's the district valuer for us that will look at that, but we do use external companies as well.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Janice Henwood, please.
Oh, thank you. On a similar vein, I'd like to know, is there any correlation between the size of a development and non-compliance with the district council's requirement for affordable housing? That's my first question. My second one, who are the developers? Are they the similar repeated developers who do not comply, or is it, a scattering? But in particular, what size of the development usually leads to non-compliance? Thank you very much.
Is that something you have an answer for now, Judy, or is that you want to respond in writing to that?
I don't carry all of that in my head.
I thought you would.
You won't be surprised to know, but anecdotally, it is usually the smaller the development, the more often the developer will cry viability. The more complex the development, brownfield, for example, or a small challenging site, is more likely to be found unviable or assessed as being unviable for affordable housing. So if that is of interest, then we could include a bit more information in the next quarter's performance report along that lines. In terms of who are they repeat offenders is, I think, the question, isn't it? And off the top of my head, I don't know that, but we can certainly have a look at that as well.
Is that something you want to see, Councillor Henwood? Would you like to see that, a small report on that, very high level? Yes, okay. I've got that. Councillor Ian Gibson, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I'd just like to ask about the threshold which is used here. If the development does not support it's the meaning of policy compliance, right? So the policy is 30%. do we, for instance, accept a lower level? I mean, like 15%, or is it a straight yes or no on the 30%?
Julie?
So obviously the council starting point will always be 30%, and we will negotiate back from that. There are opportunities to negotiate with the developer around the margins of that in terms of the percentage and the split. And of course, there's always the opportunity to take a commuted sum in lieu of, but we always try to avoid that. Obviously, the ideal is to get 30% on site, because that's the surest way of getting social housing.
Thank you. Councillor Alison Bennett.
Thank you. My question really dovetails in with the points already raised by Councillor Stockwell and others about this sort of loss of affordable housing opportunity. And it's there's a corollary of that really, which is the average price of property being sold in mid-Sussex. And you can look up on the land registry the average price of new builds in mid-Sussex compared to existing properties. I was looking at this a few weeks ago for something, and I realised there's quite a big gap in mid-Sussex between that new build price and the existing properties being sold. So June 2021, new build properties in mid-Sussex are being sold for £559,000, and existing properties are being sold for £382,000. I then compared it to sort of neighbouring districts, and that gap between sort of 382, sorry, and 559, it's much smaller. The sold prices of new properties are much closer to the sold prices of existing properties. So my concern is that the types of new property that are being delivered in mid-Sussex are not tackling the affordability crisis we've got in housing here, and they're actually very expensive and much more expensive than existing property. So my request really is, can we have a look at this in a bit more detail? Maybe it needs to go to the housing scrutiny group to make sure that the new housing being delivered, as well as making sure as many affordable homes are being delivered, but that mix is the right mix to tackle the affordability crisis in mid-Sussex.
Thank you, Councillor Bennett. Can I suggest you email into the chairman of that scrutiny committee and raise those concerns there, your questions there, please? Thank you. And we'll take one more question on this. Councillor Heidi Brunson, please.
Yeah, I was just going to pick up on Alison's point. Surely the disparity between the two figures with neighbouring authorities is going to be down in some part to land values, and the land values in mid-Sussex are considerably higher. So you can buy a Crest Nicholson house in mid-Sussex for 495,000, and the same house is 375,000 in a neighbouring authority. So it's what the land values go for in the first place. So there is that economic, that's part of that mix. It's not simply down to profiteering of the developers.
Point noted. Thank you very much. Okay, moving on to the recommendations. On page 7, note the council's performance in the second quarter of the year and identify any areas where further reporting of information is required. Advise the cabinet of any issues that the committee considers should be given particular consideration at the next one of the 29th cabinet meeting on 29th of November 2021. Please use your voting buttons.
Chairman, I'm voting, but I can't seem to, it's not accepting it.
Chairman, just to say that Councillor Eves has got her hand up, but the voting has taken place.
May I clarify, Chair?
Yeah, Councillor Eaves, yes. Are you voting in
Yes,
favour?
I'm voting yes, but the second part of the recommendation says advise the Cabinet of any issues that should be given particular consideration. And we heard today about a plan to increase the parking charges and vary the parking.
Not for this committee, not for this committee.
Ah, okay. So
Thank
we can't say to them that they should discuss that at that Cabinet.
Not for this committee, no.
Okay.
Okay, that was carried unanimously. Thank you. Agenda item 8 on page 23, capital programme monitoring. Mr. Stewart, Peter, you're going to introduce this, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I will. I mean, I'll be brief. This report comes before the committee only once a year. I have to say, it doesn't contain much in the way of new information. It's just presented to the committee for its scrutiny, because otherwise, the only time you'd see it, and many members we know don't actually read the outturn report in its full detail, would be at the end of the year. So the idea of this report is to give you a flavour of where the capital programme has got to, project by project. So it's quite a detailed report. It also, for I think probably the first time, mentioned it has 2 new columns in it in terms of its traffic light project status. So it has 2 traffic lights, which is a touch confusing. We have a project status traffic light, which is fairly straightforward. Then we have a traffic light for budget variance. And to try and make it simple, and I hope it has become simple, although I'm not sure how it'll land with you, a red light does not necessarily mean a bad thing. And in this particular report, a red light in the project variance can mean a good underspend as well as a bad overspend, if you like. It's simply a variation to a budget. I'm sure members will have understood that from the description within the report, but I thought it was worth mentioning again that a red dot does not necessarily mean the project is overspent. It could mean it's underspent, which is, which obviously we'd like to see more of. But I'd invite the members of the committee to peruse the list of projects and ask any questions. I have to say, I don't know that from my colleagues, but I've received no questions of any detail prior to the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Stewart. I don't intend to go this by line, but has anybody got any comments, please? Questions? Councillor Rex Whittaker, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Stewart. On the digital and technology section, we've heard a lot, obviously, in previous year about the rural connectivity programme. And I just note that the value is over 3 million, and we've only spent 129,000. So we've still got 3 million to spend, and the programme suggests it will be complete by April 22, which suggests that's £500,000 spent per month. Is that accurate, please? Thank you.
Peter?
Yeah, Chairman, it will be accurate. Yes, I mean this was compiled probably about 2 weeks ago. It will be accurate. I had to say that my colleague Mr. Hughes will probably have a better understanding of it. Will it all get spent by the end of the year? I don't know. I'm not sure it has to all get spent by the end of the year. But is the project on course? Well, the green, what would that be? An arrow would indicate that it was, yes, but I'll let Mr. Hughes elucidate. Thanks.
Simon?
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, that project is on target. It's actually the end of the financial year. It only commenced the beginning of October, and it might surprise you to know we're actually slightly ahead of target and spend from my meeting this week. So we fully anticipate it to be spent on time.
Thank you. Councillor Janice Henwood.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I'm looking at Burgess Hill Place and Connectivity Programme. It says expected completion date, March 2022. Now, I hope hope that can occur, because we have been waiting for some time for a little bit of enhancement in the town centre, replacing the trees that West Sussex chopped down. Also, we wanted to realign the memorial garden. So will we therefore, us residents of Burgess Hill, expect these additional improvements to be done by March 22? Thank you.
Judy or Simon, would you like to comment, please? Judy. Yeah.
So I think that level of detail I couldn't provide you with today. This is a huge programme, and actually is primarily around improving place-on connectivity. Some enhancements and improvements will be made to the public realm, but primarily this is about expansion and improvements of the cycleways and pedestrian and bridle ways. So I couldn't give you a specific answer to that question. Perhaps if you want to email in, we can get a response to you on that one.
Thank you.
Councillor Jackson.
Thank you, Chairman. Under corporate estates and facilities, drainage works, it refers to 24,000 committed for Fairfield Rec Suds Swale. Is that the Fairfield Rec in Hurstpere Point?
Judy, are you a comment? Peter, are you able to comment?
Yes, sorry, I'm just flicking.
Trying to find it yourself.
That's right. I'm just flicking through the list of projects. Is it to? I think actually that is Burgess Hill. I'm just struggling to see where it is. Why can't I find that, Chairman?
Corporate estates and facilities, drainage works. Then in the progress, it's got 24k committed for Fairfield Rec Suds Swale.
I think Fairfield Rec is in Burgess Hill. I'm assuming it's Burgess Hill. I mean, you'll appreciate it's a drainage scheme to the swale is an opposite of a bund, isn't it? So if you've seen some earthworks going on over there, that's what that would be.
Are you okay with that, Councillor Jackson?
It does say there are obviously issues with drainage in that area of Hurstpere Point as well.
Councillor Trumbull, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I would hate to disappoint my colleague, Councillor Llewellyn Burke, because every year for the past 5 years now, I've raised my disappointment that Pycombe does not have its playground listed in those to be improved. So once again, I am listing my disappointment. Thank you, Chairman.
Councillor Llewellyn Burke, I'll give you an opportunity to respond if you like.
Thank you. I've got no comment to make.
Okay, thank you. No more questions. Thank you. So moving to the recommendation to note the report. If you agree with that, please use the yes, no buttons. Tick or cross. Thank you. That is unanimous. Thank you very much. Moving along to item 9, draft corporate plan and budget on page 31. Mr. Stewart, you're going to lead us in on this, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I rather think, though, that the report very much speaks for itself. It simply sets out the process to be followed by which the corporate plan will be adopted eventually in, I think, the 2nd of March next year. The usual process will be followed. Draft budget given to members, probably emailed out on or around the 17th. I know the report mentions the 17th. It could be on or around the 17th, depending on what the government does about its provisional settlement dates. And then the highlight of January next year, of course, would be the scrutiny meeting on the 12th, where you can debate the proposals before it then moves on to Cabinet and then Council to say on the 2nd of March. Entirely the same process as has been followed the last few years. Thank you.
Okay, I think I'll move straight to the recommendation. The committee is requested to agree the proposed approach. I'll ask him. Councillor Whittaker, are you voting? Yes, he is. Okay, then it's unanimous. Thank you. Thank you very much. Moving along to agenda item 10, the work programme for 2021-22. Mr. Clark, Tom, would you like to?
Thank you, Chairman. Members will see that you've got 2 further meetings in this municipal year, both of which are rather full agendas. As Peter Stewart has said, 12th of January, you've got the draft corporate plan. 9th of March, you've got the performance monitoring for the 3rd quarter. You've done the 2nd quarter tonight. You've also got the where the working group on sustainable economic strategy will be reporting back to this committee prior to any consideration by council.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Tom. The committee has recommended to agree the indicative work programme as set out in paragraph 5 of this report. Is that agreed? That is unanimous. Thank you. Item 11, questions pursuant to Council Procedure Rule 10.2, due notice of which has been given. I have none. Therefore, I close the meeting at 19:17. Thank you all very much for your attendance.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chairman.
Good evening.